The insertion craft quavered as it knifed through the ragged upper haze of Adrastia, a bronze and saffron gas giant whose thunderheads could swallow terrestrial continents. Captain Celine Miles stood braced in the open ramp, boots magnetized to the deck, the planet's fury yawning below her like a hungry throat. Lightning flickered up through 1,000 kilometers of clouds, silent at this altitude, but bright enough to ghost across the faces of the 6 operators in her squad. "Ghost 1 to Spectre," she said, subvocalizing into her jaw mic while the internal timer glowed in her retinal overlay. "We make the drop on the next convective lull. Copy?" "Copy, Ghost 1," came Spectre's reply from their stealth corvette, hanging black against empty space. "Alliance main fleet exits slip in 43 minutes. If those Dominion buoyancy forts are still afloat, Admiral Harlow's boys will get butchered. Then they won't be afloat," Celine answered. To her left, Thorne adjusted the stabilizer vanes on his drop pod. Rishi quietly recited the flight plan. Petra kissed a charm stitched inside her gauntlet. None of them wore insignia, only the matte ghost skin armor that drank light and broadcast a shifting spectrogram designed to fool most sensors. In Alliance dossiers, they did not officially exist. The battleships Hecate, Styx, and Pharmacon floated 300 kilometers down in the mesosphere, each a kilometer long, keel-vented to suck hydrogen into fusion guts and expel helium-rich lift envelopes. From those mobile fortresses, the Dominion enforced a no-fly perimeter that had stymied the Alliance for months. The weapons those battleships carried could rake orbit, but they were vulnerable to the very atmosphere that kept them aloft. Sabotage the buoyancy reactors, hijack the storm herders, and gravity plus chemistry would do the rest. A green room pulsed. The moment arrived. "Burn masks. Drop clean," Celine ordered. 7 coffin-shaped pods spat from the insertion craft and fell like black shards into the Titaness weather engine below. A heartbeat later, the corvette vanished behind refractive camouflage, leaving the ghosts to the mercy of a world that had never tasted bare human bone. The first 5 kilometers were frictionless silence. Then the slipstream found their pods and screamed. Celine's suit displayed altitude in red numerals, bleeding downward. 120,000 meters. 110,000. She exhaled, slow, letting the pod's ablative shell scorch in opaline streaks around her. Tangled lightning veined the clouds beneath, glowing teal where ammonia crystals diffracted the flash and shielded instrumentation would melt, but ghost pods were wrapped in chimeric alloys stolen from a dozen secret programs. A jolt rattled her spine as she pierced the ammonia murk. Pressure tripled. Outside, winds exceeded 400 kilometers per hour. The pod sensor blister aligned with a narrow eye in the storm, a transient calm purposely seated by Dominion weather guns. Through the gap loomed the battleship Hecate, suspended on bloated orange gas balloons, hull-plated in black osmium. The sub was a diplomated orange gas balloons, hull-plated in black osmium. Celine's heads-up tagged a landing vector on the starboard dorsal balcony, a maintenance deck typically serviced by drone gliders. She noted her squad's icons dropping in tight formation. At 35,000 meters, the pods opened like husks. Wings of graphene filament sprang out, catching the wind. The ghosts stepped into free fall, riding personal stormfoils that flickered indistinct against the gloom. Celine angled her body, microthrusters spitting nitrogen, and tasted the metallic tang of the planet inside her rebreather. The world smelled of thunder. "Telemetry intact," Lenny the tech whispered over comms. "Hecate's net handshake still masquerades as clean. Ghost feeds are piggybacked." "Maintain silence, except critical," Celine replied. Even a packet burst could betray them. Hecate filled her vision spires, antenna forests, mooring cathedrals and vent stacks belching hot helium. She glimpsed tethered storm herder drones, silver cruciform craft riding electromagnetic rails, nudging cyclones like shepherds steering flock. Perfect. If they could flip those circuits, the planet itself would become an executioner. 5 meters above the balcony, Celine fired her mag clamps. Boots kissed metal with a muted thud. She folded the storm foil, now stiff as plastic, and stowed it to the vac conduit strapped across her back. Shapes coalesced: Thorn, Rishi, Petra, Kirov, Laney, and young Sarah the medic. 7 ghosts, unseen. A maintenance hatch thunked under Thorn's pry tool. Petra slid a fiber optic snake inside, slicing the alarm line. They dropped through humid twilight into access corridors humming with fusion pulse and the slow heartbeat of a living leviathan. Surfaces were condensed with moisture. The smell of ozone and fermented hydrocarbons clung to every valve. 200 meters to buoyancy reactor cluster, Lenny noted, flicking a pen-sized cuner across a Dominion data port. Doors obeyed. Lights stayed red. They moved in silence, choreography born from years of black operations. Selene point, Thorn close cover, Petra and Rishi splaying sensors, Sarah tail with countermeasures kit, Kirov lugging the heavy magnetoplasma charges. Ghosts were clandestine even within clandestine units. Each had burned official identities on Nightingale fires. A drone clicked around a junction. Anarachnoid sentinel, ceramic legs, multispectrum eyes. Selenine flattened against pipework, suit shifting hue. The drone paused, scanning. Rishi flicked a finger. A tiny coilgun slug hissed. The drone sagged, a hole neatly between photoreceptors. They caught it, lowered it, silent, and proceeded. At level R19, the deck grates warmed their souls. Beneath lay the buoyancy cores, vast toroidal rings that cracked hydrogen nuclei into helium, venting the lighter gas upward through balloon tresses. Destabilize those rings and Hecate would lose lift like a punctured lung. They descended ladders into a vaulted chamber glowing furnace white. Plasma conduits arced through magnetic loops, lighting catwalks with dangerous radiance. 2 technicians in silver Dominion smocks worked at a console. Petra lobbed a whisper grenade. The pellet burst, releasing flex carbon filaments that wrapped the techs' mouths and wrists before they could shout. Sierra sedated them. Kirov set to work, magnetic boots thunking on steel. 10 kilos of shaped plasma. Overpressure will shear the toroids, vent helium, and ignite whatever's left in the hydrogen sacs. 3-minute fuse. Too long, Selene said. We need Hecate afloat until Alliance fleet enters engagement envelope, or the wreckage becomes friendly fire. Kirov nodded. Remote trigger, then? Selene inhaled. Good. Lenny Stormherder control. Forward masts, comms deck C-14. I can piggyback right here if you keep the nodes hot. Do it. Lenny knelt at a secondary server rack. Her fingers danced. Code scrolled across Selene's overlay as Lenny ripped Dominion command qualifiers and grafted ghost keys. The Stormherders, she explained, used ionization cannons to carve conduits through the clouds, delivering gigavolt lightning to targets. Dominion gunners normally tamed that energy into neat packets. But if Lenny widened the arcs and tuned them to resonate with the native ammonia storms churning below, then each bolt would flash boil kilometers of hydrogen, creating uplift spikes violent enough to toss battleships like driftwood. Kira, Petra, Selene said. Shadow Lenny, Rishi, Thorn, with me. We need redundancy charges on the ventral keel. They navigated downshaft elevators, passing crew berths and dim religious alcoves where Dominion cadets prayed to some monetized saint of conquest. The deeper they went, the more the hull groaned, reacting to outside winds. Thorn's voice cracked soft through comms. Baromagic surge. Planet's warming up a tantrum. Means our window shrinks, Selene muttered. Move. At ventral keel, they set secondary charges by the hydrogen scoops. Any frantic Dominion engineer who tried dumping fuel to lighten ship would instead spill a firestorm. Then alarms wailed. Compromise? Petra asked. Selene hissed. Talk to me, Lenny. Not me, the tech replied. I'm still ghosted. Looks like upper decks spotted the dead drone. Selene scanned the route. Dominion response drones would flood the corridors. Heavier Exos troopers might follow. She touched the small of her back where a ceramic blade waited. All ghosts, exfil path Gamma. Rendezvous point starboard aerostat fin. They started climbing through service ducts. Red strobes bled across walls. Boots clanged, echoing. The ship seemed to tilt fractionally, an unsettling sign that atmospheric shear was already nudging the Leviathan off station. Rishi kicked a hatch. It opened onto a long hangar bay where drone bombers rested like predatory beetles. A squad of Dominion sentinels guarded the entry, helmets plumed with dark crystal. One sentinel turned, and Celine shot him center helmet with a silenced flechette. The body folded. The others swung weapons, but ghost suits misdirected targeting reticles. Petra flicked flash charges, burning optical sensors. Thorn's rail carbine spat metallic whispers. In 12 seconds, the hangar fell silent. "Grab wings," Celine ordered. They each unfurled spare storm foils, prepping for a fast launch, but a heavy bulkhead slammed down, sealing the bay. Automatic lockdown. "Override," Thorn asked. 5010 encryption, Lenny answered over comms. "Need 60 seconds. "We don't have it. New plan." Celine surveyed the bomber drone's sleek delta frames with vacuum thrusters for high-altitude maneuvering. "We ride theirs." Kirov cracked open an access panel. Hot-wired manual start. Hydrogen engines coughed. Ghost climbed atop the bomber, magnetized to its skin. The hangar roof split, exposing the royal. Cyclonic winds howled inside. Lock clamps released. The bomber catapulted forward into a screaming maelstrom. Instantly, Celine was blind, buffeted by forces that hammered ribs and blurred vision. She flattened, HUD updating relative position, 0.9 clicks starboard from Hecate. The bomber's autopilot tried ascending, but Lenny's remote hack forced it to glide low along hull curvature. "Fin dead ahead," Petra called. They jumped, storm foils snapping open, and skated across turbulent flow until magnetic boots clamped onto the starboard aerostat fin, an immense, scissors-like structure anchoring sail membranes that harvested electrostatic charge. From here they saw the vista, multiple Dominion battleships, rising through gauzy curtains of cloud. Stylized runes on their hulls glowed with reactor heat. Between them drifted flotillas of escort frigates and swarms of hunter-killer drones. Lightning spider-webbed across the sky, drawn to ionic beams the Dominion fired to corral the storm. Far above, the early pinpricks of luminal tears shimmered, the Alliance fleet dropping from slip space. Celine's timer read 12 minutes. "All charges set," Kirov confirmed. "Storm Herder overrides live." "Fleet comm?" Celine asked. "Buried behind jamming blankets," Lenny said, "but I can squeak a quantum handshake if we deploy the beacon." "Do it." Celine unclipped a crystal sinew-wave transmitter no larger than her thumb and flicked it into the gale. The beacon rode particulate updraft, climbing to orbit on a microwave sail. With luck, Alliance Command would receive the single word encoded in its glow. "Ready." A bright line slashed the upper sky Dominion orbital guns, opening on the arriving Alliance vanguard. Another, brighter, a rail spike from an Alliance dreadnought, spearing through vacuum and atmosphere both, starfire reflecting off cloud anvils. Celine's suit temperature spiked. Banked sunlight from kinetic impacts flashed across the stratosphere like false dawns. "Time to let Adraste speak," she said. Lenny keyed the Storm Herder command. Across Hecate's spine, the cruciform drones tilted, thrusters erupting blue. Instead of kneading the storm into docility, they stabbed into the heart of an embryonic cyclone, seeding it with charged barium dust. The cloud responded as though insulted. Within seconds, the cyclone's wall soared a kilometer, the eye sharpening into a titanic drill. "Hecate is losing pitch," Thorn noted, gripping a fin strut. The entire warship lurched, port balloons sagging as uneven lift battered the hull. Dominion controllers issued frantic broadband commands. Celine could almost taste their fear as muzzled glimpses of their speech leaked into public channels. But their own network was hijacked. Bogus telemetry convinced auto valves everything was nominal until it was far too late. "Trigger charges now," Celine ordered. Kirov smiled behind his faceplate and tapped the detonator. A muted concussion rippled beneath their feet. Deep within the warship, toroid rings sheared, venting helium in a shrill geyser. A microsecond later, hydrogen lines reversed, sucking raw atmosphere into fusion chambers that were no longer magnetically contained. The bow of Hecate bloomed in a blue-white sphere, briefly illuminating half the hemisphere. Then, the sphere collapsed inward, ripped the ship in two, and exhaled incandescent fury. Shockwaves slammed the remaining Dominion vessels. Hydrogen sacks ignited on the battleship's sticks, 500 kilometers downwind. Its captain tried an emergency ballast dump. The burst met the newborn cyclone's lightning and turned into a ribbon of exploding gas, wrapping the Leviathan in a burning wreath. On Pharmakon, alarm klaxons echoed over open comms. The last intact Dominion warship clawed for altitude, trying to escape the atmosphere and rendezvous with orbital allies. Celine watched it ascend past them, hull glowing red from thruster overload. "Lenny," she said softly, "can you reach Pharmakon's weather grid?" "Negative. They just severed links. But we still own the storm." Celine thought. The cyclone below had reached Category 12 according to the insane scales used for gas giant weather. Updraft towers rose 30 kilometers, pluming ammonia ice into space. If Pharmakon broke into orbit carrying that much flammable hydrogen, it would be a fusion warhead pointed at the Alliance fleet above. "Then we ride it," she decided. She extended her storm foil and stepped into the gale. One by one the ghosts followed, swooping downward toward the raging eye like motes on the rim of a celestial maelstrom. Celine's stomach folded, G-forces rattled teeth, lightning halos crawled over their armor. "Vectoring you onto a slipstream." Lenny fed real-time airflow to their HUDs. "Ride the 220 meter per second jet. It'll sling you up to Pharmakon's underside." They dove. Windscreen blurred into a single note too high for hearing, felt only in bones. Celine tracked Kirov's icon. He clutched the final packet of charges Plan B for Pharmakon's keel. Moments stretched eternal, then snapped short. The jet stream curved. Suddenly, they were corkscrewing upward along the eye wall, whipped around like arrowheads. Through thinning vapor, Pharmakon loomed, an obsidian whale speared with antennae. Plasma flak peppered the air hunters had marked them. Rishi banked, jinked, but a molten shard cleaved his wing. He spun, vanished into clouds below. Felony swallowed the knife of grief. Mission first, morning later. They pitched under Pharmakon's starboard lip sacks. Celine's grapple hooked a girder. Thorn slammed beside her, then Petra, Kirov, Sarah, Leni. Alarms everywhere. Crew raced along catwalks, skidding at the sight of Ghost emerging from the very storm. Celine led them through a pressure lock into hydrogen recycling halls. Dominion Marines cornered them, 8 armored troopers firing arc rifles. Bullets of electricity cracked. Celine hurled a mirror smoke sphere. The entire corridor filled with swirling chaff that confused targeting LiDAR. Kirov unleashed a broad-spectrum blinder. Thorn went toe-to-toe, monoblade flashing, slicing trooper joints. Petra stitched the chaos with suppressed shots. In 40 seconds, only Ghosts remained upright. "Hydrogen manifold junction ahead," Lenny said, breathing hard. "One well-placed overload, and the ship's envelope becomes a bomb." Kirov prepped his remaining charge. This one lacked remote trigger's manual fuse. "Captain, no time for exfil. Someone stays." Celine glanced at him. Kirov's eyes were calm behind the visor. She opened her mouth, closed it. He shook his head. Decision made. "Give me 90 seconds. He donned a suit patch with their skull moon emblem and grinned. Celine clasped his forearm. "Make it count." She dragged the others back toward the outer hull. They clipped onto emergency rappel lines, cast themselves into the open gale. The moment they cleared, a blossom of white star fire ruptured from deep inside Pharmakon. The explosion didn't destroy the ship outright. Instead, it tore a gaping wound through the helium sacs and set loose an invisible, deadly secret superheated hydrogen streaming into oxygen-rich blast foam, used in its own fire suppression. Celine's suit registered the thermal spike. Then the stream hit a lightning filament birthed by their cyclone. Pharmakon became a small sun. The concussion ejected Celine and the remaining Ghosts upward like seeds. High above, Alliance strike cruisers opened with mass drivers, smashing surviving Dominion escorts. Dogfighters traced contrails of condensed vapor across the burning sky. From below, the corpse flares of battleships painted the cloud deck in hellish hues. Celine spiraled helpless until an Alliance SAR skiff translated into view, silvered hull radiant against the vortex. Magnetic hooks snagged her foil. She collapsed onto the deck, lungs burning in mixed gases. Petra slammed down beside her, then Lenny, then Sira dragging Thorn, whose left arm hung limp but attached. No sign of Kirov, no sign of Rishi. Spectre's voice cracked in her helmet. "We're clear. Allied fleet reports enemy atmospheric assets destroyed, orbital guns silenced, all thanks to 7 ghosts." 5, Celine corrected, tasting iron in her mouth. 2 are home before us. The skiff banked. Beneath, Adrastia's storm still raged, but its eye now glowed with the detonation's afterlight, swirling like a brand on the planet's skin. The vague shape of a skull over a crescent moon. Celine watched it recede as the skiff clawed skyward toward the waiting embrace of friendly cruisers. She felt the planet's murmurs through the hull, a distant thunder that sounded almost like applause, or the heartbeat of the ghosts who had willingly become part of its storm. Above, the Alliance fleet formed arrowhead patterns, engines fiery against dusk. Ahead awaited more wars, more missions erased from any ledger. But for a moment, suspended between storm and stars, Celine allowed herself a breath, a single ragged breath. For Kirov, for Rishi, for the quiet legend that would spread in whispers, that on Adrastea, humans taught a planet to kill a fleet, and the storm remembered their names.